Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news. You're listening to Bloomberg Businessweek with Carol Massar and Tim Stenovec on Bloomberg Radio.
Alcohol products like beer and wine should carry warnings of their links to cancer, the U.S. Surgeon General said, citing an increased risk of developing tumors in the breast and other parts of the body. Kind of the perfect day for us to talk and drink non-alcoholic wines. It's not just Dry January, but this news from Vivek Murthy coming out earlier today.
Exactly. We've slowly been kind of reaching into the space more and more aggressively. It is a perfect day to do it. We have Tim have a perfect guest to do it.
Grant Hemingway is co-founder and CEO of Libby Wines. It makes non-alcoholic sparkling rosé and sparkling white. Grant joins us here in the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studio. Welcome, Grant. How are you?
Thank you, guys. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Really cool origin story here because you founded this. You have a history in the wine industry. You founded this with the former executive chair of Founders Brewing Company. Back when I did drink, I did love All Day IPA because it had a small amount of alcohol in it. Very famous All Day IPA. How did Libby Wines come together?
Well, John, my now co-founder, and I actually were connected through some mutual friends. And yes, a beer guy and a winemaker getting together. John did cut his teeth in that sessionable category. But I think it was one of those early indicators for him and for me watching from afar that this moderation wave was forthcoming. And we really wanted to lean into my
Wait, did you really see this moderation wave coming?
100%.
What were you seeing specifically?
I mean, the crystal ball that we saw was, which we couldn't have predicted, was going to be this self-regulating. Meaning there are a lot of people out there, and there's these buzzword terms, zebra striping or bookending. Which
I don't know what that means.
So a session, it's like a drinking session or a socializing session in which you have a full-fledged cocktail or a glass of wine, and then you mix over to a non-alcoholic.
Okay.
So it seems to me that this is the consumption pattern happening for those that still are consuming, not the abstainers, which seem to be growing also by the day.
Can I ask you I know you and I have talked about it.
Oh, yeah, I've talked about it. I'm happy
drink.
to talk about it.
You used to drink some alcohol.
Yeah, and even, to be fair, I did have a sip of like a really nice stout that my wife opened the other night. Yeah. I get really bad headaches when I drink. And what I found was that the less I drank, when I did drink, the worse the headaches got with less alcohol.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, it is not worth, after drinking one beer, to wake up and have my day the next day completely ruined. So I don't know if it's like an allergy or something, but fortunately, it was very easy for me to stop drinking because I wasn't drinking that much anyway. But what I noticed, Grant, and maybe it's just kind of like a bias of where I am in life, but a lot of my friends were having kids. They were getting into their 40s. They were like, if I need to be up early, I can't be staying out late. I need to be prioritizing rest and sleep. And this was how they were dealing with that.
And that's our exact experience too. My wife and I, we have 2 kids back in California, and really started to almost like this self-awareness or observation that we were just not drinking wine as much.
Yeah.
And it was a lifestyle thing. We, had young kids and we were managing careers and alcohol was kind of getting in the way of that. And so it was kind of that moment, that light bulb where I kind of set out and surveyed the competitive set, and nothing was really enticing from a qualitative perspective, but I'd been 18 years in winemaking, and this was a big loss. Like, why am I not drinking the product that's supporting our career?
Well, what do your friends in the wine industry say? Because they're getting hit hard right now.
They're getting hammered. It's concerning. I mean, the downward, and you just reported on the Surgeon General, like there's an anti-alcohol movement, which I don't know that I'm all for. In our business, I would say I'm for. But generally speaking, this moderation is a cultural movement. And I think the wine industry is really waking up to it. And look no further than the results at the register.
Yeah, and it's funny to watch, kind of old television where people were constantly smoking and had a cocktail. I even think of like my dad coming home from work and had kind of a serious, spirits and cocktail, fairly regularly when we were younger. And then eventually all of that stuff started to go away, even with his generation, and easing of it.
Have you heard of California sober?
What is it now? What is it?
I know Grant
is Californian, so yes, California.
Apparently, California sober is you abstain from alcohol, but you partake in THC,
Okay.
Or everything else.
everything else.
Wait, is he blushing?
No, he's not.
Well, no, this is just the bronzing that I get from being a Californian.
All right, so Grant, let's talk about, because you brought us a couple of sparkling. You brought us a sparkling white and a sparkling rosé.
Yes.
And I'm curious about. I'm going to pour some, and
Please.
you can kind of walk us through it. But like, tell us, because Tim and I have actually tried some non-alcoholic beverages, and
Some better than others, we can say.
So tell us about what went into making this.
I think that was
share it around.
Yeah, the biggest white space for me was trying to take a winemaker's perspective with a wine drinking expectation. Please,
who's our expert.
And so I really tried to deconstruct the whole winemaking process. So where are the grapes grown? When are we picking them? How are we fermenting them? Making sure that the non-alcoholic was the end result. And so the whole process.
Do you have a glass? Yeah. Or do you already have? Or did you already pour? Oh, so here, pass a glass.
Well,
folks,
it's almost happy hour.
The sausage and non-alcoholic wine is being made as we speak.
That's right.
So go ahead,
Thank
please.
you, Carol. So the whole process for me was trying to appeal to a wine drinker's expectations, and so the dealcoholization or alcohol removal process is very aggressive. It's not as exact as we'd like, and hopefully technology keeps improving, but you remove a lot of the aromatics, the texture, and certainly the alcohol, which is a massive component to the integration of the overall wine experience.
Right.
So you're eliminating roughly 14% of your product.
That's something that's really interesting. We spoke to Duncan Fox earlier, not yet, of Bloomberg Intelligence. He's a consumer products analyst, and he talked about this at the top of our program today, that the technology to remove alcohol has gotten so much better in recent years. He mentioned Caliber when he was a kid being a terrible alternative to it was like the alcohol-free Guinness. He called it drain backup. I don't know what he called it.
Drano,
Drano? Like it was Drano or something. Yeah. And so what is the technology and how has it gotten so good? Like, how do you do it?
It's a filter, and there are various ways that you're doing alcohol removal, but it basically is molecular weight.
It's pretty nice.
No, this is good. This is good.
I appreciate it.
And we're a tough crowd.
The process, though, it's very extracted on weight and it's selective, but it's not perfect. And so the imperfections are the removal of aromatics and the removal of varietal character. And so that's why some of the early entrants you might have seen are adding a lot back to try and replace, but it's not adequate. And so with this, it's very bright, it's very refreshing.
I got to be honest, when Grant walked in with it, I saw it, and he opened it up. I was thinking to myself, am I going to be drinking Martinelli's right now?
Yeah, that's what right?
Yeah, and I'm not. I mean, this is
Martinelli's, the apple juice, right, that we give for kids.
That you had when you were a kid, and it was New Year's Eve.
Yeah, totally.
This is not the sparkling apple juice.
No.
This is something different. It is closer to wine, for sure.
So is it essentially, and forgive me because I was kind of running around pouring and stuff, but so is it wine just with the alcohol pulled out?
100%. It's fully fermented grapes from California,
right,
that we reduce or eliminate the alcohol from, and then go through the flavor composition or formula, and then carbonate it up to basically a Prosecco level. So it's really meant to replace that sparkling.
To a Prosecco level.
Yep.
Yeah.
What has your consumer research told you about when people buy this and they drink it, if they drink more than they drink of the a counterpart with alcohol in it?
I mean, my own consumer research is telling me I drink much more of it, because there's not the guilt or the shame of knowing I have to be tempered or temper my consumption on this because of what I have on the horizon. So I think what you mentioned, Athletic, at the top of the call, they have done such a phenomenal job on matching quality that people don't have to compromise anymore on what they want for a beer occasion. That needs to happen in the wine category. Mm-hmm. And I think there is a massive wake-up call. We talked about the downtick in wine sales. Please.
I'm gonna start pouring the rosé. So you can either bottoms up there, buddy, and we can try this. So I'm sorry, keep going. Oh, here. Okay. Yeah. I'm gonna pour me. So what's the difference? Same process for this?
Same exact process, just different grapes produced in a rosé style. You hear that clanking? That's the swing top we've got on the bottle, so that you can.
So you can put it, close it, pop it back in the fridge. Would you like? Oh,
I'm okay.
You're good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. I've got to drive.
So very funny. So you close it, pop it back in the fridge, and it stays.
Yes, that was one of our learnings from I think in terms of trying to be innovative around the wine category is you're never going to see a champagne bottle with a swing top on it or a Prosecco bottle. They're etched in tradition.
Oh, this is nice. Did you try this?
And so with the addition of the swing top, we wanted to really do preservation.
It's a softer touch a little bit, right? The rosé.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah.
Are you planning to do any non-carbonated versions?
Absolutely. Yeah, R&D, I'll admit sparkling was more in my repertoire and our wheelhouse.
Is it easier to do?
I would say it's easier to replicate or replace a sparkling.
Yeah.
But the still wine category, I think, is very, it's a huge opportunity for the category. If we're to nail a Chardonnay or a Sauvignon Blanc or a Pinot Noir, a lot of drinkers out there, and you talked about who is this consumer?
Yeah.
It is definitely the wine consumer that is self-moderating.
What I'm also finding is bars, restaurants, parties, social events, professional events have increasingly non-alcoholic options that are not soda.
Huge real estate being garnered by the mocktails and commanding quite a price. But I think it's about more options for inclusive occasions, making sure that everyone is able to participate, and not feeling sheepish or needing to go with the lime in a seltzer water as the chameleon.
All right, so you introduced this October, is that
Just
right?
October.
All right, so I know this, but we're Bloomberg. So give us any indications of the kind of demand you're anticipating or maybe already seeing.
So in 18 years in wine, and this would be the 5th startup for me, I've never seen something like this. And to your point, October, we didn't have a lot of data behind us.
Yeah.
But we have gotten so many fortunate retail programs in anticipation of Dry January, big moment.
Right.
And
good timing.
Could not be, we're blowing away our goals. And obviously the proof will be in the pudding with repeat business and velocity, but the early adoption has been through the roof.
Funding, self-funded, raise money. How have you done it?
Raised a fair bit of money, went to the outside for the first time, but John and I actually self-funded the initial. Wine is a very capital-intensive business.
Yeah.
You guys likely know this, but we feel like the category is not a fad. This thing is here to stay. It's going to keep growing. The retailers are now starting to get behind it, which is a massive win.
Well, happy Dry January.
Yes.
Promise to come back soon. Let us know how things
Absolutely.
are going. Grant Hemingway, co-founder and chief executive officer of Libby Wines.
Carol, we just talked about sparkling wine. Check. Let's talk about food, because we actually waste a lot of it here in the U.S. The USDA estimates that between 30 and 40% of the food supply is actually wasted.
That kills me.
It kills me.
How many times have we talked about there's so many people who are, what do they call it?
Food insecure.
Food insecure.
Yeah.
So you've got that going on. And then at the same time, we have tremendous waste in this country.
So part of it is us, buying stuff and not using it. But a big part of it also is just poor planning when it comes to grocery companies, when it comes to food spoilage in the supply chain. It's a very complicated thing.
Not good, right?
Yeah, it's not good for our wallets. It's not good for the cost of food. And it's not good for the environment.
Right. Roni Neff is associate professor in the Department of Environmental Health and Engineering at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health, focusing on the connection between food waste and climate change. We should note, of course, the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health is supported by Michael R. Bloomberg, founder of Bloomberg LP and Bloomberg Philanthropies. Roni joining us from Baltimore. It is good to have you here with us. It kind of breaks my heart that we continue to have these conversations about the amount of food waste that is going on. But share with us a little bit more in terms of context of how much is being wasted. We mentioned a little percentage, a big percentage at the kickoff to this, and why this continues to happen.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for the chance to be on this show. So it's a staggering percentage of our food supply. And by one estimate, at the national level, we're talking about throwing out the equivalent of $495 billion. And if you put that, you were talking about food insecurity. If you put that in terms of meals, it's over 190 billion meals per year, just thrown out. And so, that's I'm sorry, it's 149 billion meals.
Yeah. It's incredibly depressing.
Incredibly depressing. It's so much food. And so, and then if you think within our households, every household on average is throwing out about $1,500. And there's not many people that you could go to and say like, hey, you want to throw out $1,500? And they'd be like, sure, no problem. It's a lot of money that we didn't need to have been throwing out.
Is it just?
Wish you could talk to my 5-year-old. Like, that when you making food for kids is like, you just asked for this and now you're not going to eat this.
No, but it's like,
Kills me.
It's interesting. I was listening to the surveillance team and I was thinking about how I grew up, and we had 2 refrigerators. We had a freezer.
Well, how many kids did you have?
There was 7 kids. It was a big family, but nonetheless, there was always major shopping, trips and so much food. And I get it. My daughter, who spent some time over in Europe, said, we used to shop every day and we bought a little bit. We had a small fridge, in our it's just a different way of thinking. And is it the way Americans think? Is that the problem? What is it? Is it that we just are an abundant economy, although not everybody feels that way, certainly in the U.S. economy, but what is it?
Yeah, it's so many different things, and that's part of what makes it challenging to address it, because there are so many different things going on. But I think that you've hit on a lot of really important points in terms of the cultural factors, and that we have this idea that we need to have abundance. And if we're not providing abundance, we're not providing well enough for our family. Another one is this idea that food is only going to taste good if it's absolutely the freshest. And if you think about whether it's frozen vegetables cooked into a meal or something that's a little bit older, you would never know the difference. And so kind of digging into some of those issues as well. There's a lot of upstream factors going on in terms of the package sizes and other things that could be done by the food industry and elsewhere that could also prevent this. And then one other cultural factor that's important, I think, is just how unplanned a lot of our lives are, and how we thought we were going to be home, we bought this food for that, and then something happened, and so we weren't. And so really needing to strategize around the reality of our lives.
I'm wondering about the connection with climate change. I mean, there's a few issues here. One of them obviously has to do with the resources that go into actually bringing food to the table, greenhouse gases along the way. Then there's also the element of raising that food, watering whatever you're doing, whatever you're growing, feeding a cow, everything associated with the cow. But then there's also throwing it away versus composting. What sort of has the biggest impact when it comes to our environment?
So the biggest impact starts with the production, as you were saying, and in particular meat production. But then throwing it out in the landfill is also tremendously impactful. And so if you think of climate change, we're putting basically the equivalent of 42 coal-fired power plants worth of greenhouse gas emissions into the air every year from food that gets wasted. And there's a group called Project Drawdown that ranks climate solutions, and they do all this complicated modeling, and they come out with, the potential impact based on feasible changes. And at a global level, wasted food comes out as the top solution that could make an impact on global climate change over the next 20 years. It's, and again, if you ask people, what do you think are the top 5, the top 10 climate solutions? I don't think food waste would be on very many people's lists. So I think that there's a lot of need to raise some more awareness about that.
Totally agree, Roni. And I do wonder, sometimes you raise the cost of things and people are much more careful, right, about waste. And I don't know if ultimately that leads to change, that you're less likely to overbuy because you don't want the waste because you can't really afford it because it gets so expensive. If you could change one thing in our system that would get to this 30 to 40% of the food supply being wasted, what one thing might that be? And just got about 40 seconds.
That's so hard because there's so many different things that we need to do, and they all need to work together. So I guess, gosh, if there was one thing, I think it would be having everybody, whether it's consumers or businesses or anywhere, tune in to the amount of waste that's happening, because I think one of the biggest challenges is that we're really not aware of it, and we just throw out a little bit here and a little bit there, and it adds up. And so if we look at what's going on, then we can strategize about what are the solutions that are most important in my household, in my business, to reduce the waste of food.
Yeah, right. Awareness and having an understanding of what's going on. That's kind of often the first step. Hey, Roni, thank you so much. An important issue, and we're so glad we could spend some time with you on it. Roni Neff is Associate Professor in the Department of Environmental Health and Engineering at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health.
I'm looking forward to explaining that to my 5-year-old.
It's hard with
Stop asking for another chicken nugget if you're not going to eat it.
It's tougher with kids. It is tougher with kids. But I think, I don't know. I'm guessing we all waste a lot of food.
Yeah.
We're trying. We're really trying.
Just eat it.
Just eat it. Just eat it.
Just eat it.
Sounds like a dad, right? All right, guys, don't go anywhere. We're getting ready to wrap up here on the Friday edition of Business Week, and this is Bloomberg.